Hi, I'm Dr. Nag, a dad, a pediatrician, and a chief medical officer at the KSP Hospital in Dixon, Illinois. I know that I've been dealing with the regular responsibilities and all the stresses that come with life. Kids, work, as you have. Add to that the pandemic, all the changes that we've had to make in our lives, and all the changes that our kids have had to make in their lives. It's a lot. As a parent, I know that I have had to help my kids deal with their lives being affected by COVID, along with balancing my own. With COVID, the changes in how we are doing school, how we are living life, how we are interacting with people, how we are not interacting with people, these are all stressors. And they're not just stressors for us, but they're also stressors for our teens and our children. So to help you and your children, we put together a video. Here, Jessie West, who is a licensed clinical social worker and a counselor, who works with me at the KSP Hospital Edwards Pediatrics Clinic in Dixon, will be sharing with you really important information about how you can take care of yourself while you're helping your children take care of their stresses and anxiety.
Hi, my name is Jessie West. I am the pediatric social worker at KSP Hospital, and though I'll be addressing kids specifically, the issues that I'll be talking about apply to people of all ages. To begin with, let's address what things kids and teens these days are stressing about. And well, actually it's a lot. Going back to school this year, everybody is concerned about what that's going to look like, whether they're going to be doing, in-person school all the time, or doing, part at home, part at school, or even switching to homeschooling. That causes stress and anxiety in kids. Also following the new safety rules, having to wear masks in public, washing hands a lot more, and then also being concerned about other people not following the safety rules is a concern for kids and teens. They're also concerned with getting COVID themselves or bringing it home to their families. Another biggie is body image that kids struggle with, whether that's I'm too fat, I'm too short, I'm too tall, too skinny, too ugly, I don't look like the person on Instagram that is a model, that sort of thing. Another anxiety stressor for kids is belonging. Everybody wants to feel like they belong to a group, and now with everything with COVID, they might not be going to school with their friend group, or if they're at home, not having those other friends to be around, and so just stressing about that whole belonging. The future, that's a really big one for right now, the fear of the unknown. Nobody knows what to expect, what's coming next. Are sports going to happen? Is homecoming, prom going to happen? What about my senior class trip or graduation? Everybody's saying this is not the life I ordered. What is this going to look like? And things are not the way I expected them to. So a lot of anxiety and stress that our kids are dealing with these days. So what we can do to help our teens and kids become aware of their anxiety symptoms is to first recognize the bodily symptoms of anxiety. Our bodies are really amazing in that they are programmed to be our natural alarm system. This is also known as that fight, flight, or freeze response. So body responses can include many things, all the way from our head to our toes, whether that's fuzzy thoughts, racing thoughts, having angry eyebrows, frowning face, sweaty face. People feel like their heart is racing. Some call it butterflies in their stomach, though they're the nastiest butterflies I've ever felt before in my life. Other people feel like their legs are ready to run, things like that. Other people feel restless or lack of concentration. Some people sleep a lot, others don't sleep at all. People are irritable, different things like that. So when you notice your teen having these symptoms, say for example, if your teen is pacing around, say, I see you're pacing, is there anything that's troubling you? And let's talk about that. Helping your teen become aware of the way their body is feeling is a great way to start that conversation with them to help them understand that they are anxious and then work through whatever is causing their stress and anxiety. So there's a chain reaction that occurs in each of us with every situation we experience daily. Every action we take is a response to something that happens to us, and these are called trigger events. So the example I use with the kids that I work with is picture a Nerf gun. So what's the trigger on a Nerf gun? It's the spot where you squeeze it, and then what happens? A reaction happens and causes that Nerf dart to shoot out the other end of the gun. So the same thing is true with trigger events that happen to us. Something happens, and then it causes a reaction farther down in each one of us. And so our responses can be either good or not so good, and they cause us to think, feel, and respond or act in a certain way. And these can be good or bad. So an example would be that your teen receives a bad test grade in math. This might lead the teen to think they're not good at math, makes them feel really stupid, and then they're completely bummed out the rest of the day. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way to respond to that trigger event would be for a teen to be like, all right, I messed up on this test, but I'm going to study harder and do better on my next one. So they walk away feeling somewhat confident and better able to handle their day and not be completely bummed out the rest of the day. So the trigger event here was the negative or bad test grade, right? And helping your teen to understand how they think is important so that they can understand that they are in control of how to think and respond in every situation that they are facing these days. Anxious or worry responses to trigger events are often because of automatic negative thoughts that we have. So picture a marquee sign, the ones with words constantly scrolling across them. Our minds are the same way. There's always thoughts scrolling across our minds. So if we don't take control of what we are thinking, the thoughts can veer to the negative side and become a runaway train that is out of control. Another way to define these is, as the picture shows, thinking traps. Our mind tend to fall into these traps when we are not consciously taking control of our thoughts. There are many different types of thinking traps you may face. A few include black and white thinking. So this is that all or nothing thinking. You're always mean to me. You never let me do anything. You're always so unfair. Or how about jumping to conclusions? Coach didn't play me for the first part of the game. He must not think I'm any good. Fortune telling, I'm going to mess up my speech and then everyone's going to laugh at me. Mind reading is another big one that kids do, or people in general. Those kids at the other lunch table looked at me, and now they're talking to each other. I know they're talking about me and that zit that's on my face and how ugly I look. Catastrophizing. He didn't answer my text. He doesn't like me anymore. He's probably talking to that other girl. I'm never going to find anyone that likes me. I'm never going to get married and have kids, and I'm probably going to die all by myself. Any of these sound familiar? Ever catch your teen doing these? Or ever do any of them yourself? If so, you're in the boat with the rest of humanity. So what do we do with those negative thoughts that we're having, those automatic negative thoughts? Remember the triangle that I showed earlier, and that our thoughts influence how we feel and how we act? Well, when that happens and we see our kid doing that, recognize in ourselves that we're having negative thoughts or are caught in one of those thought traps, this is what we can do. And it's going to be hard, the hardest part you'll do, but I promise the work is so worth the effort. We must challenge the negative thoughts. Picture your mind like a castle. There are bad thoughts trying to attack your mind. You have to decide if you want the bad thoughts to come into the castle or take them captive. The way to do this is to challenge those negative thoughts. If you or your teen are struggling with negative, worrisome, or stressful thoughts, you can ask yourself or your teen the following questions. Is this true? Will this matter a day, a week, a month, or a year from now? Am I possibly jumping to the worst possible extreme? What is another way to look at this situation? Or what would I tell a friend who is going through this situation? What if they were having those thoughts? What would I say to them? Would it be different than what I'm saying to myself? Another way to challenge your negative thoughts is to think about putting your thoughts on trial. You are the judge and the jury, the prosecution and the defense. So take a piece of paper or a whiteboard or whatever you have and draw a line right down the middle of it. The left side is the defense and the right side the prosecution. Have your teen write down on the defense side all of the reasons their negative thought might possibly be true. And then on the other side, write down all of the reasons that thought isn't true. Then have your team be the judge and decide what the verdict is. Will they believe the defense or the prosecution? It's also important for your team to have a variety of positive coping skills to use. In the therapy world, we call these positive coping skills toolbox. But I found that many teens find the word toolbox to be super lame, so using words like a bag of tricks or instant vacations can be other ways to frame or reword coping skills toolbox. One size does not fit all with positive coping skills. Your teen and you will need to work together to define what coping skills they are willing to use and which ones they prefer using. It's also important to have a lot of these instant vacations ready to go, as what works one day may not work the next, or may not be appropriate to use in different situations. There are different categories of coping skills that you can use with your teen. The first kind is called distraction ones, and these are things that would help get your teen's mind off of what is stressing them out. So scientists have even found that just distracting your mind for 2 to 3 minutes can help just alleviate some of the symptoms of stress, so it's not quite as severe as what it was before. So this can be watching a show, a TikTok video, or whatever, doing an art or craft project, sports, petting an animal. Then the second one would be an emotional release. So this can be yelling, crying, watching a funny movie. Some people like to box or have a dance party, write in a journal. Some of the teens I've worked with have purchased a journal called Wreck This Journal, and it's found on Amazon. And so each different page in the journal is a different way to wreck that page of the journal. And so it gets their frustrations out and helps just like calm them down a bit. The third way is self-love. This is also known as self-care. So getting a massage, doing your nails, taking a bath, cooking a special meal, taking your teen out for ice cream or special coffee, things like that can help. The fourth way is accessing their higher self. This is sometimes referred to when we quit navel gazing or staring at ourselves so much and get our eyes off of ourselves and onto other people. We can do this by praying, volunteering, doing something for someone else, completing random acts of kindness, or starting a gratitude or thankfulness journal. So there are a couple things you can do as a parent or caregiver in helping your teen in your life deal with stress and anxiety. The first would definitely be respect and validate your teen's feelings. Don't make fun of them for being anxious. Don't tell your teen to suck it up and deal with it. It's just move on, it's just life. Rather say something like, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, how can I help? That doesn't mean you need to take away all their sources of anxiety and stress. Rather, just walk alongside them and support them. As adults, none of us like having a boss, a coworker, or anybody else constantly harping on us, reminding us of every time we've screwed up and yelling at us, or in general seems to go out of their way to make our lives miserable. We want to avoid them as much as we can at all costs. So why should we expect our teens to be any different than us? Remember that your teen is a person too, and who wants to be treated well and respected. Another thing to do is model positive coping. We all know that kids and teens are really good at catching us when we're not modeling those behaviors that we're telling them they should be doing when we're not doing it ourselves. So, when you're stressed or feeling anxious, talk about it in front of your teen. Say, for example, like, I'm feeling nervous about this big presentation I have to do. It makes my muscles tense and I feel like puking. I'm going to go for a walk to help relieve my anxiety. Also, you can help brainstorm with your teen on how to handle different situations. This is where that bag of coping skills tricks come in handy. Offer suggestions and walk alongside your teen. Don't force them to do a coping skill they don't want to do, because that's not going to help anybody's anxiety or stress at all. One for going back to school would be to get a big whiteboard or print off weekly calendars and work with your teen to write down all of the daily assignments and projects that are due later so that there are no surprises that come along the way. You can also write on that schedule what activities are going to be coming up, haircuts, different things like that, so everybody's on the same page and knows what to expect when. And lastly, start each day fresh. If that day didn't go so well, and you and your teen were at each other's throats by the end of the day, go to your separate corners and start the day new with a clean slate. And always remember, every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. So even when you're struggling, or your teen is struggling, try to find something good that happened that day.